Have you ever wondered what truly happens when we let go? Whether it's the material possessions that define us, the relationships that we hold dear, or even the fear of death itself, letting go seems impossible for many of us. But what if the key to lasting peace and spiritual liberation lies in this very act? In Buddhism, death is not seen as an end, but as the ultimate test of detachment, a chance to break free from the attachments that bind us. Today, we will explore how the Buddhist teachings on impermanence and the art of letting go not only prepare us for the afterlife, but transform the way we live. So, how can we find peace by letting go? In Buddhism, death isn't seen as the end of existence, but as a natural part of the cycle of Samsara, the continuous process of birth, life, death, and rebirth. This differs sharply from many Western religious traditions, particularly Christianity, where death often signifies the transition to either heaven or hell based on one's actions during life. However, Buddhism introduces the idea of karma, the principle that our actions, intentions, and thoughts in this life directly influence our future existences. This isn't just a spiritual concept, but one deeply intertwined with the natural order of the universe. When we consider death in the Buddhist sense, it's less about a finality and more about a transformation. It's like the way the seasons change. Winter doesn't erase the earth, and autumn doesn't end the year. Instead, each season leads into the next, marking the flow of life through cycles. So death in Buddhism isn't a frightening event, it's a passage, much like turning the page to a new chapter in an ongoing story. Take, for example, a well-known figure like Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, who passed away in 2011. Jobs was revered not only for his revolutionary work, but also for his unique worldview. He once said, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work." He lived his life with immense passion and drive, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire millions. For Buddhists, Jobs' life and death can be viewed through the lens of karma. The fruits of his actions, choices, and innovations continue to ripple through the world, even after his passing. His legacy of inspiring creativity and challenging the status quo exemplifies the way karma works, how our actions shape the future, not only for ourselves but for others as well. In the moment of death, according to Buddhist teachings, what persists is not the body but the consciousness, the true essence of who we are. The body, as per Buddhist belief, is just a temporary vessel, much like a car is to a driver. Once the journey ends, the vehicle may be abandoned. But the driver, the consciousness, moves on. This is a powerful concept because it means that death is not a cessation of being but a transition. The consciousness, laden with karma, both good and bad, continues its journey. Whether this journey is immediate or takes some time depends on one's accumulated karma, but ultimately it finds its next destination in a rebirth. To better understand this, let's consider a modern parallel, the life of a public figure like Elon Musk. Musk has had an enormous influence on technology and space exploration, leading ventures like Tesla and SpaceX. His actions have certainly left an imprint on the world, but they have also created a vast network of followers, workers, and communities tied to his vision of the future. If we view Musk's life through the lens of karma, we see how his actions, whether consciously or unconsciously, have affected others and the world in profound ways. Just as Musk's innovations may continue to influence the world long after his death, so too does the Buddhist view of karma suggest that one's consciousness, once the body dies, influences the next life in accordance with the choices made during their lifetime. Buddhism teaches that the moment of death is one of deep awareness, not a moment of unconsciousness or oblivion. Some might think of death as similar to flipping a switch, 1 second alive and the next nothing. However, Buddhist teachings assert that this isn't the case. Consciousness doesn't just vanish. Instead, it transitions, just as energy doesn't disappear but transforms. The transition may be subtle or intense, but it's always an awareness of the truth of life and death. This consciousness will eventually find its next destination, whether it's another life, a higher plane of existence, or a deeper state of enlightenment, depending on the karma accrued during life. It's crucial to understand that this process isn't one of a mere wait in some limbo state. The journey of consciousness is active, and while the body decays and returns to the earth, the consciousness moves on, driven by the karma of one's life. In Buddhism, this process is tied to the concept of rebirth. Each life is an opportunity for the consciousness to evolve, to understand, and to move closer to liberation from samsara, the endless cycle of suffering. In essence, death in Buddhism is seen as an opportunity, not a loss. It is the soul's natural evolution toward enlightenment. Think of someone like the Dalai Lama, a man whose entire life has been dedicated to serving others and spreading compassion. His actions, like those of any other person, accumulate karma that will ultimately influence his next rebirth. But for someone deeply in tune with Buddhist teachings like him, the goal is not to simply escape suffering, but to transcend it entirely, reaching nirvana, where the cycle of samsara ends. For someone who is spiritually awakened, death is not a fearful abyss, but an unfolding of the next step towards spiritual freedom. This idea of consciousness continuing after death is deeply embedded in Buddhist meditation practices as well. Meditation, for Buddhists, is not just about calming the mind, but about deepening the awareness of the self. This awareness is the key to understanding the true nature of life, death, and rebirth. Through meditation, a practitioner learns to let go of attachment to the physical world, understanding that our consciousness is separate from the fleeting material existence. When death comes, they are prepared to face it without fear, because they understand that it is not an end, but a transition. In contrast to many Western religious views, where death often carries a sense of finality and judgment, Buddhism offers a view of death as a continuous journey. Rebirth isn't just about reincarnation, it's about the ongoing development of the soul's potential. Whether we are reborn into a higher or lower existence depends entirely on the choices we make in this life. Karma is the blueprint for how we experience the next life. Much like a master builder using an architect's design to construct a house, our actions, our thoughts, our words, and our deeds lay the foundation for the kind of future life we will lead. So when we die, we don't cease to exist. We simply move into the next phase of our existence, shaped by the karma of our past actions. This understanding isn't something we should fear. In fact, it should inspire us to live more mindfully, understanding that the actions we take today have profound consequences on our future. If we want a peaceful, fulfilling future, we must create it by living with wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness in this life. Death, according to Buddhism, isn't a moment to dread. It's an inevitable part of the larger process of samsara. It's not an abyss where everything ends, but rather a new chapter in a never-ending cycle. By accepting death, understanding its role in the grand scheme of things, we can begin to live our lives with greater purpose and meaning, recognizing that the way we live today shapes the journey of tomorrow. In Buddhism, the concept of consciousness after death differs significantly from the common Western understanding of an eternal soul. Rather than an immortal soul that continues to exist in a permanent form, Buddhism teaches the idea of anatta, the doctrine of no self. This principle posits that there is no unchanging, eternal soul that persists from one life to the next. Instead, what continues after death is a stream of consciousness, shaped by the karma accumulated through one's actions, desires, and attachments in past lives. This stream of consciousness is not static. It is dynamic and fluid, much like a river flowing from one bank to another, constantly changing as it moves forward. However, it never ceases to flow. The stream of consciousness is propelled forward by the actions and choices made in the past, which form the karmic imprints carried over to the next life. This process is ongoing, with each new existence shaped by the previous one. Think of a famous figure like Nelson Mandela. His actions and choices, spending 27 years in prison, fighting for justice, and working towards reconciliation, shaped his legacy, his very stream of consciousness. Even after his death, his influence continues to guide and inspire millions worldwide. In Buddhist terms, the actions Mandela took during his life generated positive karma that lives on, guiding future generations towards peace and equality. His consciousness, so to speak, continues to ripple through the world, transforming it for the better. This fluidity of consciousness is most clearly expressed in the Tibetan Buddhist concept of the bardo. The bardo is the intermediate state between death and rebirth, a crucial stage in the Buddhist understanding of the afterlife. In this transitional space, the consciousness of the deceased is neither fully connected to the body nor fully reincarnated into a new one. Instead, it exists in a state of liminality, where it is exposed to visions, experiences, and teachings that reflect the deceased's past actions. The bardo is described as a place of great clarity and confusion. In this space, the consciousness of the deceased may encounter beings, deities, or even loved ones from their past lives. However, depending on the individual's karmic imprints, the experiences may evoke feelings of fear, peace, longing, or even regret. The clarity comes when one is able to recognize the true nature of these visions, realizing they are projections of their own past actions. But for those who have lived lives dominated by negative karma, the bardo may also be a time of confusion and disorientation, where the deceased may feel lost, unable to recognize the truth of their existence. Take, for example, the story of a wealthy man who, in his lifetime, was greedy and selfish, never caring for the suffering of others. In the bardo, he may encounter terrifying visions, perhaps of demons or flames, symbolizing his attachment to material wealth and his disregard for the well-being of others. These images are not external forces, but manifestations of his own unhealed karma. On the other hand, a person who has lived a life of compassion and mindfulness may experience a sense of peace in the bardo, with visions of deities or peaceful beings guiding them toward their next rebirth. The bardo is not just a mystical space, but a reflection of the state of one's mind at the time of death. The consciousness, shaped by years of actions and decisions, is laid bare in this space, revealing the karmic baggage that will guide the next journey. This is why Buddhism emphasizes the importance of mindfulness and meditation in life. By cultivating wisdom and compassion in the present, we can better prepare ourselves for the moment of death and the journey through the bardo. In a more relatable sense, think of a powerful figure like Elon Musk. Musk's consciousness, shaped by his innovative work with Tesla, SpaceX, and his efforts to revolutionize multiple industries, continues to have a profound impact. His work is a reflection of his vision, but it is also a result of his actions, decisions, and desires, whether or not Musk is a Buddhist. His life embodies the Buddhist principle that our actions shape our future lives, both in the literal sense of the next life and the figurative sense of the legacies we leave behind. Musk's legacy, driven by his own choices, will continue to influence humanity long after his death, much like the stream of consciousness described in Buddhist teachings. The idea that our actions continue to affect the world after death also speaks to the Buddhist concept of impermanence. Everything, from our thoughts to our actions, is temporary, and yet the effects of those actions can be lasting. In this way, death is not a complete erasure of self, but rather a transition into another state of being. The continuity of consciousness, guided by the karma accumulated during one's lifetime, is a central idea in Buddhism, suggesting that we are not merely victims of fate, but active participants in shaping our future. This teaching offers profound implications for how we live our lives today. If we understand that our actions have lasting consequences, not just for ourselves, but for others, we begin to view our lives through a lens of responsibility and interconnectedness. Just as Elon Musk's innovations continue to shape the world, so too do the actions of every individual leave a karmic imprint that influences the future. In Buddhism, it's not just the grand acts of world leaders that matter, but the small, everyday choices we make. Imagine a simple act of kindness, a moment of compassion, a decision to help someone in need. This action, according to Buddhism, doesn't just disappear. It becomes part of the stream of consciousness that continues, potentially guiding us toward a better future or even influencing the lives of those around us. The bardo teaches us that the true nature of our consciousness is reflected in our actions, and the more we live with mindfulness and compassion, the more peaceful our journey through the cycle of samsara will be. The bardo thus serves as both a teaching tool and a reminder. It is not just a space where we encounter visions. It is a space where we encounter ourselves, our actions, desires, and attachments, The Bardo offers us a glimpse into the deeper workings of our mind, and by preparing for it with wisdom and mindfulness, we can navigate the transition with greater clarity and peace. In Buddhism, the law of karma plays a pivotal role in shaping the fate of an individual's consciousness after death. Unlike many religious doctrines that hinge on the idea of divine judgment, Buddhism emphasizes personal responsibility and the moral quality of one's actions. The fundamental belief here is that actions, whether good or bad, carry with them consequences that transcend a single lifetime. The law of karma is not about punishment or reward. Rather, it's about the natural cause-and-effect relationship between one's actions and the life experiences that follow. At the core of karma is the understanding that our actions, whether positive or negative, create lasting imprints on our consciousness, shaping our future lives. In simple terms, if a person lives virtuously, cultivating compassion, wisdom, and kindness, they are likely to be reborn into more favorable conditions. On the other hand, if their actions are harmful, selfish, or based on greed, their next life may be more challenging, filled with obstacles that reflect the negative karma they have accumulated. To understand this better, let's consider the story of a well-known historical figure, such as Warren Buffett. Known for his wisdom in business and philanthropy, Buffett has made decisions throughout his life that reflect his value of long-term success over short-term gain. While Buffett's financial wisdom is widely acknowledged, it is his commitment to giving back to society through charitable donations that is most closely linked to the Buddhist principles of virtue and good karma. Buffett's philosophy of living a life based on values of generosity and responsibility has earned him a legacy far beyond monetary success. According to Buddhist thought, his actions will ensure that his future incarnations are surrounded by conditions that mirror this positive karma. The importance of rebirth in Buddhism is not just about the next life. It is also about the continued evolution of one's consciousness. The stream of consciousness, shaped by past karma, continues its journey from one existence to the next. This concept of rebirth is not merely a cycle of living, dying, and being reborn. It is a profound opportunity for the soul to evolve. In the cycle of samsara, the more positive actions one takes, the more favorable the next rebirth may be. The focus is on cultivating good karma by leading a virtuous life, a life driven by compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness. Consider the impact of a famous figure like Mahatma Gandhi. Known for his philosophy of nonviolence and selfless service to humanity, Gandhi's actions throughout his life exemplified the kind of karma that leads to positive rebirth. His life was deeply rooted in the principles of truth and compassion, and these values are reflected in the lasting impact of his actions. Gandhi's legacy continues to influence political leaders, social activists, and individuals around the world who aim to create a more peaceful and just society. According to the Buddhist law of karma, the positive energy he created through his deeds not only shaped his own journey, but also continues to reverberate through the generations that follow. In Buddhism, rebirth is not just about the accumulation of good karma, but about spiritual development and enlightenment. Each rebirth provides an opportunity to progress toward ultimate liberation, nirvana. This liberation is the end of the cycle of samsara, where one is free from suffering and the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. But the key to reaching nirvana is not found in the mere accumulation of positive karma. It lies in cultivating wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness. These qualities enable an individual to transcend the cycle of samsara and achieve the ultimate goal of Buddhism, freedom from the cycle of birth and death. A powerful Buddhist parable that illustrates the significance of karma and rebirth is the story of a king who, upon his death, faces the consequences of his life's actions. This king lived a life filled with greed, selfishness, and a lack of compassion for others. As a result, when he passes away, he is confronted with the reality of his karma. His rebirth, far from being one of luxury or ease, is marked by hardship and suffering. His actions during his life have shaped the circumstances of his next existence. This parable serves as a reminder that the life we lead is crucial to how we will experience death and rebirth. Our actions matter, and they are not just transient moments in time. They are the foundation upon which our future is built. In Buddhism, every action, no matter how small, has lasting consequences, and it's this very awareness that inspires mindfulness and compassion. It's not just about moral behavior, though that is certainly a key component, but about living with wisdom and purpose, recognizing that every action contributes to the shaping of our future. Take the example of someone like Oprah Winfrey, who is widely regarded as a figure of immense influence and positive impact. Oprah's success is not merely attributed to her media empire, but to her ability to inspire and uplift others through her philanthropic work and commitment to personal growth. Her actions, rooted in a deep sense of empathy, kindness, and self-awareness, are reflections of the kind of karma that Buddhism encourages. Oprah's life embodies the principles of compassion and wisdom, which are essential for cultivating positive karma and ensuring a beneficial future. In Buddhist thought, rebirth is not a random event, but a continuation of the consciousness that shapes one's destiny. This is why it is so important to live mindfully and to act with intention. Every decision we make, every relationship we cultivate, and every moment we choose to act with compassion or wisdom contributes to the karmic imprints that will influence our future lives. The Buddha's teachings make it clear that we are not merely passive bystanders in the process of life and death. We are active participants who shape our destinies through our actions and intentions. This focus on the law of karma and rebirth underscores the Buddhist belief that spiritual growth is continuous and eternal. Each life, whether it is a life of prosperity or adversity, is an opportunity for the consciousness to evolve, learn, and grow. The goal is not to accumulate wealth or material possessions, but to cultivate qualities that lead to wisdom, compassion, and the eventual release from the cycle of samsara. The Buddhist view of karma and rebirth challenges us to rethink the way we approach our lives. It asks us to look beyond the immediate, temporary rewards of our actions and consider the long-term consequences of the way we live. It encourages us to live with greater awareness, to make conscious choices, and to recognize that every action, whether it is a small act of kindness or a major decision, has the potential to shape not only our future, but the world around us. Ultimately, the concept of karma and rebirth in Buddhism is a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of all beings. It teaches us that our actions matter, not just for ourselves, but for the entire web of life. By living with compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness, we not only create a better future for ourselves, but also contribute to the betterment of the world, ensuring that the cycle of samsara leads us all toward greater peace and understanding. In Buddhism, the afterlife is not framed in the same way as many other religious traditions, where it is often seen as a destination for reward or punishment. Instead, Buddhism presents the afterlife as a continuation of the life cycle, a further step in the journey of samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The focus is not on divine judgment, but on the spiritual potential each individual holds at the moment of death. According to Buddhist teachings, death is not the end of existence. Rather, it is an opportunity for liberation, a crucial step toward nirvana, the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice. One of the most insightful texts for understanding this concept is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. In this ancient scripture, the deceased are encouraged to recognize the moment of death as a moment of great potential. This moment represents a threshold, a space between the past life and the next, a chance to transcend the cycle of suffering and rebirth that characterizes samsara. It is in this state that one has the potential to achieve liberation. However, reaching this state is not simple or automatic. It requires a deep understanding of the impermanence of life, the nature of suffering, and the ability to detach oneself from worldly desires. For instance, take the life of someone like Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. Bezos, with his towering success in business, has spent his life relentlessly pursuing growth, innovation, and profit. His story serves as an example of the Western ideal of success, working toward material gain and personal achievements. In contrast, the Buddhist view on the afterlife would encourage Bezos, like anyone else, to recognize that his attachment to wealth, status, and even the Amazon empire would not go with him when he dies. The teachings of Buddhism would urge him to consider the impermanence of such pursuits, pointing to the necessity of letting go of these attachments in order to reach nirvana. In the context of the afterlife, his life's focus on material success would be seen as potentially obstructing his path to liberation unless balanced with spiritual wisdom and compassion. In Buddhism, detachment from the material world is not about rejecting life or renouncing all desires. Rather, it's about recognizing the impermanence of these desires and the suffering they cause. Buddha himself taught that life is marked by suffering, and this suffering is rooted in attachment to possessions, people, and even our sense of self. These attachments bind us to the cycle of samsara, making it impossible to break free from suffering and achieve nirvana. Take the example of Elon Musk. Known for his work with SpaceX and Tesla, Musk embodies the modern pursuit of innovation and progress. His ambition to colonize Mars and revolutionize electric cars can be seen as a reflection of his drive to push the limits of human achievement. However, from a Buddhist perspective, Musk's life, like Bezos's, serves as a reminder of the need for detachment. While his contributions to society and technology are groundbreaking, Buddhism teaches that even the greatest achievements in the material world cannot free us from suffering unless they are accompanied by spiritual understanding. The knowledge of an afterlife full of potential for liberation can significantly change the way we live. If we understand that death is not the final judgment, but rather a continuation of the journey, we might begin to see life differently. Instead of viewing life as a race to accumulate wealth, power, or fame, we might shift our focus to accumulating wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness. The teachings of Buddhism suggest that true freedom comes not from external achievements, but from inner peace and detachment. This doesn't mean abandoning our responsibilities or goals, but it does encourage us to let go of the idea that our happiness or identity is tied to material success. Consider a famous philanthropist like Bill Gates, who transitioned from running Microsoft to dedicating a significant portion of his wealth to global health initiatives and poverty reduction. Gates's life demonstrates an evolving awareness of the limitations of material success. His transition from being a tech mogul to a global humanitarian mirrors the kind of spiritual evolution that Buddhism encourages, moving beyond attachment to wealth and power toward a more meaningful and compassionate existence. In the Buddhist framework, Gates's shift can be seen as a move toward greater spiritual understanding, where his focus on giving back to the world rather than acquiring more wealth is a step toward breaking the cycle of samsara. From a Buddhist perspective, the afterlife, rather than being a destination for punishment or reward, is a continuation of the spiritual journey. Death marks a transition, not an ending, and in that moment, one's consciousness has the opportunity to break free from the chains of attachment. This understanding challenges the conventional view of death as something to fear or avoid. If we understand death as a passage to liberation, it encourages us to live with a sense of purpose that transcends material success. Buddhism also teaches that the journey to nirvana is not a simple or quick one. It is a long path, requiring immense personal growth, deep introspection, and an unwavering commitment to spiritual practice. One of the key elements of this journey is mindfulness, the practice of being. Fully aware of the present moment without attachment or aversion. This practice allows individuals to confront their attachments and desires directly, giving them the clarity and wisdom to see through the illusion of permanence. By cultivating this awareness, individuals can gradually loosen their grip on the things that bind them to the cycle of suffering and move closer to the ultimate freedom of nirvana. Consider the life of a figure like the Dalai Lama, who has spent decades teaching and embodying the principles of compassion, nonviolence, and mindfulness. His life is a testament to the power of spiritual practice and the pursuit of enlightenment. The Dalai Lama's teachings encourage individuals to focus on inner peace and kindness toward others, not because they will be rewarded in the afterlife, but because it is the natural path toward liberation. His understanding of death and the afterlife aligns with the Buddhist view that life is not about accumulating external achievements, but about cultivating inner peace and understanding. By recognizing the potential for liberation in the afterlife, we can begin to see that life's true value lies in the inner transformation that occurs through mindfulness and compassion. It's not about what we leave behind in the material world, but how we evolve spiritually and how our actions influence others in a positive way. The pursuit of nirvana, then, becomes not just a personal journey but a collective one, where the cultivation of wisdom and compassion leads to a more harmonious world. In Buddhism, the concept of letting go is central to spiritual practice, and it reaches its most profound expression when we consider the moment of death. Death, as the ultimate form of impermanence, serves as the final test of our ability to detach from the material world. Buddhism teaches that the process of detaching from everything we hold dear, whether it be our possessions, relationships, or even our own bodies, is essential for achieving inner peace, not just in life, but especially at the moment of death. This concept of detachment can be challenging to grasp, especially in modern society where attachment to material things, success, and status is so deeply ingrained. Consider someone like Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, whose life's work has been centered on building an empire of unprecedented scale. Bezos' wealth, influence, and legacy are undeniable, but in Buddhist terms, all of these attachments are impermanent. Bezos' wealth could evaporate with changing markets, and his physical body will eventually decay just like everyone else's. Recognizing this impermanence is key to letting go, which allows us to live more freely and in peace. The Buddha's teachings emphasize that life is inherently impermanent, and this includes all things, our bodies, our relationships, and our possessions. By accepting this truth, we start to understand that fear, especially the fear of death, arises from our attachments to these impermanent things. It's not death itself that causes suffering, but our attachment to the idea of permanence in an impermanent world. When we are able to let go of these attachments, we are able to live more fully and more freely, liberated from the anxieties that often accompany life and death. A powerful example of this teaching from the Buddha's life is the death of his beloved son, Rahula. The Buddha's life was filled with moments of profound sorrow and loss, but none more intimate than the death of his own child. Rahula was the Buddha's flesh and blood, and losing him was a deeply personal experience. Yet in the face of this immense grief, the Buddha did not succumb to despair. Instead, he accepted the reality of death with a calm and focused mind. Understanding that it was part of the natural order of things, his son's passing was not an unnatural occurrence or a tragedy in the traditional sense. It was a manifestation of the impermanence that governs all life. The Buddha's reaction to Rahula's death exemplifies the essence of detachment in Buddhism. Rather than clinging to the idea of permanence or trying to resist the inevitable, he accepted that death is a part of the cycle of life. This story serves as a powerful lesson for anyone facing loss. It teaches us that by embracing the truth of impermanence, we can transform our sorrow into a deeper understanding of the nature of life and death. The Buddha's ability to maintain peace in the face of such personal loss shows that detachment does not mean a lack of love or emotion. Rather, it's an understanding that life, in all its forms, is transient. Detachment is not about being indifferent or unfeeling. It is not about cutting ourselves off from the world or from our loved ones. Instead, it's about recognizing that attachment to the world of form and material possessions leads to suffering because everything in this world is subject to change. As long as we remain attached to things that are impermanent, we will always be vulnerable to loss, fear, and anxiety. By letting go, we are freeing ourselves from the cycle of suffering and allowing ourselves to experience peace. Consider the life of a leader like Oprah Winfrey, who built a media empire that has changed the lives of millions. Oprah's success and influence are monumental, but she has often spoken about the importance of spiritual growth and letting go of attachments. In her interviews, Oprah has discussed how she learned to detach from her need for validation from others, focusing instead on cultivating inner peace. This ability to let go of the attachment to external validation, wealth, and status has allowed Oprah to maintain a sense of calm and purpose despite her immense success. In the Buddhist context, the idea of letting go is also about not being attached to the self, to ego, or to the need to control everything around us. We live in a world that constantly encourages us to grasp at things, to accumulate wealth, to gain recognition, and to hold on to identities that define who we are. However, the Buddhist teaching of anatta or no self suggests that clinging to an identity, whether it be one of success, status, or even personal loss, only binds us to the cycle of suffering. Take the example of a highly influential individual like Elon Musk, whose identity is intertwined with his companies and technological innovations. Musk has transformed the space and electric vehicle industries, yet his life's work is tied to his identity as a visionary entrepreneur. Musk's attachment to his work, his status as a leader, and the constant pursuit of innovation can all be seen as forms of attachment. If Musk or anyone were able to practice the Buddhist concept of detachment, it would mean understanding that all of these external markers of success are fleeting. At the end of his life, just like any of us, his body will pass, and his name will eventually fade from history. The only true legacy, according to Buddhism, would be how he cultivated wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness in his life. This idea of letting go also applies to the fear of death itself. In Buddhist teachings, the fear of death is rooted in attachment to the body, to life, and to the idea that death is something unnatural or to be feared. The Buddha teaches that we should not be afraid of death, for it is as natural as life itself. When we live with the understanding that life and death are both part of the same cycle, we can approach death with peace, knowing that it is a transition, not an end. It is important to note that letting go does not mean abandoning our responsibilities or relationships. Rather, it means understanding that attachment to outcomes or expectations can lead to suffering. For instance, a leader like Barack Obama, whose tenure as the 44th President of the United States was marked by significant accomplishments, must eventually let go of his political power and public position. However, his influence, teachings, and principles may continue to inspire others long after his political career ends. Obama's ability to live with grace and a sense of purpose without clinging to his position of power mirrors the Buddhist principle of letting go. By practicing detachment, we come to understand that life is a series of interconnected moments, all subject to change. Our ability to let go in the face of life's challenges and death's inevitability becomes a source of inner peace, just as the Buddha demonstrated in his acceptance of the impermanence of life. The act of letting go is not a denial of life, but an acceptance of its transient nature. It is only through this acceptance that we can truly experience peace both in life and in death. Letting go is ultimately the path to freedom from suffering. It allows us to live more fully in the present moment, without being weighed down by the past or fearful of the future. By accepting impermanence, we release ourselves from the cycle of attachment and suffering, moving closer to the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice, nirvana, the liberation from samsara. Just as the Buddha showed in the face of his son's death, the key to peace lies in recognizing that death is not something to fear, but a part of the natural order that leads to greater freedom and understanding. In the end, letting go in Buddhism isn't about abandoning the things or people we love. It's about releasing our attachment to the impermanent and recognizing that everything, including life itself, is transient. This understanding can guide us toward a life of peace, free from the fear of death and the burden of attachment. By practicing detachment, we can live more mindfully, focusing on what truly matters: wisdom, compassion, and the understanding that everything we hold dear is part of a greater cycle. In embracing the impermanence of life, just as the Buddha did in the face of personal loss, we free ourselves from suffering and move closer to the ultimate freedom of nirvana. Through the wisdom of letting go, we can live fully, without fear of what comes next, knowing that every moment is an opportunity to live with purpose and peace.